Discover the incredible revenge that transformed my life after a heartbreaking gift from my mother. Emily Harris held the pendant in her palm, the cool metal biting into her skin, a bittersweet reminder of everything she'd lost. It glinted under the soft light of her kitchen. The amethyst stone at its center seemed to pulse with memories of laughter echoing in their modest home. It was a token of her mother's sacrifices, a last gift before the cruel hands of fate snatched her away, leaving Emily with a gaping hole in her heart and a paralyzing burden of disappointment looming over her like dark storm clouds. She could still hear her mother's voice, vibrating with love. "You can do anything, my sweet girl." Now those words twisted like knives. At 28, Emily felt more like a ghost than a woman chasing dreams. Working at the local library felt more like imprisonment than a job, surrounded by peers with their fancy titles and career advancements. Each failure whispered that she was a disappointment, smothered by comparison and pressures. The weight of her mother's dreams sat heavy on her shoulders, wrapped tightly in the memories of a childhood filled with warm hugs and bedtime stories. But this pendant, this small piece of jewelry, sparked a flicker of hope amidst the suffocating despair. Its sudden illumination hinted that perhaps it held more than sentimental value. When she stumbled across her mother's cluttered drawers and those shocking medical bills became like cold water splashed onto her face, everything shifted. Her family's struggles with healthcare debt felt like a cruel indictment of a deeply flawed society. It served as both a harsh reminder and a catalyst for something bigger than herself. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Eager to dig deeper, Emily slipped the pendant around her neck and set out on a mission to discover her family's legacy. What secrets could it hold? Soon she learned of an inheritance buried deep in convoluted legal documents and property titles. A wealth that could lift her out of the drudgery of her current life. It felt too good to be true. As she unraveled her family's history, so too did the tales of many others in her community, all struggling against the same tide of economic despair. Moving like wildfire, her passion ignited others. She began organizing meetings at the community center, a gathering of neighbors tired of fighting their battles alone. Voices began to rise, the air crackled with possibility. Yet, as she stood at the helm of this movement, a stark truth emerged. Revenge wouldn't make her community stronger, but unity might. The realization stung with a blend of guilt and hope. With every story shared in those meetings, Emily felt her heart swell. The path of justice was fraught with difficult choices, but she was ready to rise. As she prepared for the pivotal community event, she clutched that pendant tighter. Would she be able to flip the script, transforming despair into action? The crowd awaited her revelation, their faces painted with anticipation. In that charged moment, a single question hung in the air: would Emily rewrite her destiny, or would the cost of vengeance tear apart the very fabric of the community she cherished? Emily took a deep breath, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a drum. The time had come to speak, to share what she had uncovered and the potential that lay ahead. The community center buzzed with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. Each face turned toward her, some hopeful, others wary. They were counting on her to ignite something that had been dim for too long. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Emily began, her voice steady even as uncertainty churned in her stomach. "We all know the struggles we face, the relentless tide of debt, and the heartbreaking silence of loneliness in our battles." She paused, assessing the crowd, mothers holding their children tightly, older individuals shaking their heads in agreement, young couples exchanging glances of shared frustration. Each expression carved another line of determination into her resolve. "I believe we can change this," she continued, the pendant heavy against her chest, radiating an energy that felt both empowering and terrifying. "We can come together for something bigger than ourselves." My mother faced challenges much like ours, and this pendant, it's not just a reminder of her. It's a symbol of hope, a spark for change. We deserve to thrive. Together, we can fight back." The crowd erupted in applause, their doubts melting away like ice under the sun. Emily felt her spirit soar. In that moment, she was not just a woman lost in grief and disappointment. She was a leader, a voice. And the power resonating around her was electric. Yet deep down, she felt a flicker of fear. It was one thing to inspire hope, another to navigate the turbulent waters of real change. What if they failed? What if retaliation against the system didn't work? With these thoughts swirling, she pushed them aside, focusing instead on the faces of her community, their hopes intertwined with hers. As the event pushed onward, stories poured out like a rushing river. People shared tales of struggles with medical debts, lost wages, heart-wrenching decisions made in the shadows of financial strain. With each raw confession, Emily felt both buoyed and burdened. They were entrusting her with their pain, their hopes for a brighter future. But amidst the sharing, something unexpected happened. A voice from the back spoke out. "Emily, what's the plan? How do we start this fight?" It was Greg, a local worker who'd been laid off during the last round of layoffs at the factory. His question hung heavy in the air, exposing the vulnerability in her rhetoric. "I'm still figuring that out," she replied, her spirit dimming slightly. "But we need to stand together, make our voices heard. It won't be easy. We might face opposition. But if we combine our resources and ideas, we can create a movement that matters." This was not just about her personal struggles or her mother's legacy. It was about every single person standing before her. It started to sink in, the gravity of the task she'd embraced. And that terrified her. What if hidden inside her quest for justice lay a monster that would consume it all? Just then, a murmuring broke out in the crowd. Whispers of opposition, of doubts about her leadership, fueled a fear she hadn't anticipated. Could she guide them through the storm? As voices drifted into uncertainty, Emily gripped the pendant under her shirt. She needed to transform that doubt back into hope, or risk losing everything in this fragile beginning. Would she find the strength to carry this movement forward, or would her dreams crumble under the weight of their expectations? The anticipation was palpable, and as silence filled the space, she could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. With the energy teetering between hope and hesitation, Emily faced the crowd. "We must decide together, are we in this fight as one?" As the echoes of her question hung in the air, the answer would shape not just her destiny, but the united future of her community. But what if their choice wasn't what she hoped for? Emily's heart raced as the silence stretched longer, each second feeling like an eternity. She could sense the tension building among the crowd, uncertainty lingered like thick fog, and her breath quickened. Had she misread them? Were they really ready to join her cause, or were they too afraid to take that leap together? Finally, a tall woman stepped forward, her face etched with concern yet softened by determination. "I'm in, Emily," she said, her voice ringing clear. "But we need a plan. I lost my job last year, and I can't keep waiting for change. What are we going to do?" The ripple effect was immediate. Heads turned, eyes brightened, and others began to raise their hands to voice their support, their hesitancies dissipating. Emily felt a surge of hope mixed with a hint of dread. They wanted action, but what kind? The weight of their expectations pressed against her, threatening to buckle her resolve. "Okay," she replied, finding strength in the unity building around her. "I'll start with what I know. We need to gather stories. Our experiences matter. We need to document everything, see how many people in our community are struggling. Numbers can show the truth. We can take them to the city council and force them to listen." A man in the back yelled out, "And what about a petition? We need to start there." "Yes, a petition," Emily repeated, grounding herself in the moment. "We will gather signatures, demonstrate that we're not alone. It will show them we're serious." Cheers erupted, and she could see their energy igniting like a match to kindling. The crowd began to buzz with ideas. People stood tall, empowered, ready to take the reins of their future. But just as she felt the wheels of change begin to turn, Greg's voice cut through the excitement. We need to be careful. What if we attract negative attention? What if they retaliate against us? His words fell like stones into the cheerful pond of enthusiasm. Emily sensed the shift fear creeping back in, ready to overshadow their fragile hope. She dealt with uncertainty every day, but others might not have that same resilience. I understand, Greg, she said, breathing deeply. But action is necessary. We can't sit back and hope things will get better. We must push against this silence. And if we work together, we can protect each other. As murmurs of agreement swept through the crowd, Emily took a moment to meet each pair of eyes in the room. They were looking for direction, affirmation, hope. Together, they were igniting something fierce. Let us start small, she suggested. A meeting once a week. We can share our stories and build our action plan. What time works for you all? Voices chimed in unison, proposing times and dates. As they settled on an agreement, Emily felt the first stirrings of something magical. Would this be the start of something larger than herself? A ripple of change that would awaken the community's spirit buried for too long. She felt a presence beside her, the supportive hand of the woman who had stepped forward. You've got this, Emily, she whispered, her eyes shimmering with conviction. Suddenly, a loud crash from the back door startled everyone. The cluster of people turned eyes wide. A figure appeared, shadowy at first, silhouetted against the floodlights outside. Sorry to interrupt, the man shouted, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture. But I have something important to share. Emily's heart skipped. Who was this man, and what news did he bring? Would it help or hinder their budding movement? As the crowd leaned in, the uncertain weight of possibility hung heavy in the air. What could this surprise visitor reveal? And would it change everything they just started to build? The man stepped closer, and the harsh light illuminated his weathered face. It was lined with stories, each crease a testament to battles fought and lost. Emily's breath hitched in her throat, the swirling anticipation electrifying the air around them. I'm sorry to barge in like this, he continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper. But I overheard what you were planning, and I think I can help. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, filled with curiosity and doubt. Emily could hardly process his words. Help? From whom? What could he possibly offer? What do you know about our struggle? Greg challenged, stepping forward with skepticism etched across his features. The crowd held its breath, the tension reverberating against the walls. The man paused, then spoke, his gaze unwavering. I've been in the fight long before any of you. I knew this community when it was vibrant, when families didn't have to worry about losing their homes or going hungry. Then everything changed. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Was this a chance for the answers they'd been seeking? People stopped listening, he continued. They looked the other way when they saw their neighbors suffering. But that's when I knew I had to act. I organized a group similar to yours, and for a while we made progress. But they turned against us. We thought we were safe, a grassroots movement, united. His voice thickened with emotion now. Then, one day, they came for us. A collective gasp rose from the crowd, and Emily's heart raced with concern. What had happened to him? What did he mean by they? Do you see this? He rolled up the sleeves of his jacket to reveal scars, permanent reminders of the confrontations he had faced. It doesn't matter what odds you're up against. If you stand up for what's right, people will try to silence you. But that's just the beginning. You have to be ready for the fight. Emily felt the room shift, each person captivated by his presence. The fire he exuded sparked a deeper understanding within her. They could no longer just hope for change. They needed to prepare for the storm ahead. We need to know how to protect ourselves, what to expect, she said, her voice steady despite the rising anxiety in the air. He nodded slowly, his expression growing more serious. I can show you how to strategize, what to watch out for, how to defend against intimidation. But it requires commitment. You'll need to give it your all, without hesitation. The crowd began to buzz again, this time with a mix of fear and fierce determination. Emily could sense that the stakes had now risen, but this was precisely the energy she needed. The clashing forces had been laid bare, the facade of normality now shattered. But even as hope flickered, doubt lingered in her heart. Was she ready for this? For the ugliness and danger that came with standing up? Emily. The man leaned closer, his eyes locking with hers. This is your moment. You can make a difference, but you need to rally your people. Are they ready? She glanced around the room, catching glimpses of faces filled with uncertainty and fear, yet also flickering with resolve. It was a complicated tapestry of emotions, but beneath that surface, she sensed their yearning for change. Now or never, Emily whispered to herself. Let us make a plan, she announced, her voice gaining strength. We'll gather every story, every voice. We'll be prepared. As the crowd cheered and huddled together, Emily felt conviction boiling within her. The community had come together, and now they were on the precipice of something powerful. But would they be able to handle the reality of this fight? Then, the man cleared his throat as if stealing to share something vital. One more thing, he began, his voice lower. You have to stay vigilant. The System 1T, just sit back and watch this unfold. A knot of anxiety formed in Emily's stomach. What do you mean by that? He leaned in closer, the intensity in his eyes deepening. There are eyes everywhere watching. You need to be careful where you tread. As the weight of his warning sank in, Emily's heart raced again. What was she really stepping into? Could they truly protect themselves against the very forces that sought to silence them? With a renewed determination, she inhaled and declared, "We will stand together, no matter what comes our way." But deep down, she could feel the uncertainty creeping in. What awaited them on this path? Would their fierce unity be enough to face whatever opposition lay ahead? A day later, the atmosphere in the community center crackled with tension. People bustled about, paperwork stacked high on tables, while snippets of heated conversations floated through the air. Emily stood at the front, heart pounding as she faced the group. The man's words replayed in her mind like an old record stuck on the same track. Stay vigilant. Today, we start to organize, she announced, cutting through the noise. We must document our experiences, every hardship, every small victory. This is our manifesto. The crowd quieted, eyes turning towards her, reflecting a mix of hope and dread. You all have stories that matter, Emily urged, her voice steadying. Each of you carries the weight of this community. Our voices combined will forge a path for change. But we need to be strategic. We can't just shout into the void. She scanned the room, noticing a mix of reluctance and determination etched on the faces before her. Greg crossed his arms, looking skeptical. What if they come for us? What if we put ourselves at risk? Emily took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Every moment we stay silent, we let fear win. I understand the risk. But if we don't stand up, it's as if we're handing over our stories on a silver platter. As they began discussing their individual experiences, the stories flowed, each person adding fragments to a larger narrative. A woman named Carla shared her struggle to keep her small business afloat, her voice shaking. I've put everything on the line, but they don't care. They just want to drive us out. Nods of agreement rippled through the group. Anger simmered below the surface, fueling their resolve. Emily's heart swelled with the recognition of their shared pain. They were no longer just individuals. They were a collective force. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the entrance, jolting everyone from their conversations. The heavy doors swung open, and there stood the figure of a man in a neatly pressed suit, flanked by two stern-looking officers. The air in the room went icy. Emily's pulse quickened. What is happening? She whispered to Greg, who looked equally alarmed. The man stepped into the room, his demeanor commanding, eyes scanning over the crowd like a hawk assessing its territory. You're all gathered here to cause trouble, I see, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Fear gripped Emily's stomach again, but she squared her shoulders. We're here to discuss our future, she declared, her voice echoing in the tense silence. Your future will be decided for you if you continue this nonsense, he warned, his gaze locking onto Emily. Enough is enough. We don't take kindly to dissenters in this town. The officers shifted, tense and ready. It was a reminder of the very threats the man had warned them about, the pervasive fear that lurked just at the edges of their resolve. A murmur spread through the room. Emily could feel the doubt creeping back in, the weight of the man's warning heavy in the air. Would this marked presence shatter their resolve? She locked eyes with the man in the suit, energy crackling between them. "We're not afraid of you," she heard herself say, surprising even herself with the aggression in her tone. "You can't silence us anymore." But as her words hung in the air, uncertainty snaked through her veins. Did she truly believe that? Were they ready for the repercussions of standing their ground? The tension reached its peak, and she realized this was just the beginning. Their fight was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. Just as the man in the suit advanced, ready to respond, Emily took a step forward, standing her ground. "If you think that intimidation will work, you're sorely mistaken." And as the crowd began to rally behind her, their voices rising in defiance, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this was a tipping point for better or for worse. She wondered what this next confrontation could unleash. Would they rise above the fear or crumble under pressure? The answer lay just around the corner, ready to unfold. The man's expression hardened, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but the collective energy in the room shifted. The murmurs grew louder, voices overlapping as people tapped into deep wells of frustration and courage. Emily felt the power surging around her, a wave of resolve crashing against the walls of intimidation. "We've had enough of your threats," shouted Carla, her earlier tremor replaced with a fierce tone. "We're not going back to silence." The officers looked uneasy, shifting their weight as more community members joined in, standing alongside Emily with clenched fists and determined eyes. Greg stood at her side, his gaze steady now, and she could feel his energy resonate with the group's desperation to push back the tide of fear. The man adjusted his suit, trying to regain control of the situation. "This isn't a game," he warned, but it fell flat. The sound of shuffling papers and outraged declarations filled the room. It was as if the collective pain of the community had broken free, unleashed into a symphony of defiance. "What do you want from us?" someone yelled from the back. "Just to keep us quiet? We deserve to be heard." Emily's heart raced as she witnessed the transformation of her community. They were no longer just individuals afraid of confrontation. They were a unified front awakening from a long slumber of compliance. She felt an exhilarating rush wash over her. But she also sensed the danger looming close, ready to strike at any moment. "Listen," Emily shouted, raising her voice to cut through the chaos. "No more hiding. We'll tell our stories, and you can try to silence us, but your threats won't stop us. We're done giving up." As her words hung in the air, the head of the man's eyebrow twitched, a subtle sign of his irritation bubbling just beneath the surface. The officers stepped closer, their eyes scanning the growing crowd, and Emily took a deep breath. This was their moment. The man in the suit seemed to reconsider, his posture slightly relaxing. "You think you can rally support?" He scoffed, but his bravado was wearing thin. "You'll only put yourself in danger. The community you're trying to protect is about to be crushed if you continue this." Moments passed in tense silence. Emily could feel the air thick with hesitation, could almost taste the fear that lingered just beneath the surface. But there was an undercurrent of something else, a determination that thrummed through each person around her. "They wouldn't back down quietly." "Let them try," someone shouted from the back. "We'll fight for our town." Encouraged, Emily pressed forward, her voice growing stronger. "This is about more than just us. It's about standing up for what's right. We have families, dreams, and businesses here. We won't let you take that from us." In that instant, clarity hit her. The man in the suit was right. They were on the brink of something dangerous. But in that very danger lay the potential for transformation. Emily realized she was not just fighting for her community. They were fighting for their identities, their lives, and their future. "You can't control what you can't silence," she added, her voice unwavering. "We will make ourselves heard. You might have power, but we have conviction." The mantra spread through the room, igniting a fire in each heart. Emily could feel the shift, a collective movement building. They were ready to reclaim their stories, their lives, and ultimately their town. And yet, as the man's expression darkened with a blend of defeat and anger, Emily wondered what costs this fight would extract from them. Would their newfound courage bring reconciliation, or would it ignite a conflict beyond their control? The air buzzed with possibility, but the underlying tension revealed a new reality. As the officers exchanged glances, waiting for the moment to act, Emily knew they had crossed a threshold. There was no going back now. Just then, the lights flickered ominously, and the crowd gasped collectively. Emily felt unease settle, like a heavy mist around them. What would happen next? Would they step further into the unknown or retreat? She was afraid to find out, but at that moment, courage overshadowed fear, and that unyielding hope was enough to move them forward. The flickering lights dimmed the room, transforming the atmosphere into something almost surreal. Shadows bounced off the walls, creating a tangle of shapes that seemed to mirror the confusion and anxiety swirling in Emily's mind. She caught sight of Greg, his eyes wide, reflecting the same mix of determination and fear that gripped her heart. "Stay strong," he whispered, his voice barely reaching her over the growing din. The officers were tensing, their fingers hovering near their belts. Emily could sense the change brewing, a storm gathering strength around them. "Where do we go from here?" Someone shouted, breaking through the noise. The question echoed off the walls, lingering like a challenge, daring Emily to respond. She felt every gaze turn to her, and in that moment of silence, the weight of expectation pressed heavily onto her shoulders. "Together," she exclaimed, clenching her fists. "We go forward. We reclaim our power." Her words reverberated through the room, resonating with those present. She saw nods of agreement swell in the crowd, their conviction transforming into an unbreakable thread of unity. And yet, beneath that rising tide of hope, a shadow of doubt flickered. Could they really stand against the forces arrayed against them? The man in the suit grasped the edge of the table, leaning forward as if he was about to unleash a torrent of apathy upon them. "You're making a grave mistake," he said, his tone laced with a mix of menace and exasperation. Emily squared her shoulders, ready to push back the encroaching fear. "We're done being afraid," Carla shouted, echoing Emily's thoughts. "You've had your way for too long. We're tired of living in shadows." The crowd erupted into cheers, voices layering together to form a powerful chorus. Emily felt the electric buzz vibrate through her, amplifying her own courage. But just as quickly, a chilling reality seeped back in a knowledge that lifting their voices might draw unwanted attention, might provoke a retaliation that could cost them dearly. What would be forced upon them for taking the stand? She glanced at the officers, who were shifting on their feet, an unsettling tension radiating from their posture. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but that risk was dwarfed by the desire to break free from the shackles of silence. Then, just as the noise reached a crescendo, the lights went out completely. The room plunged into darkness, and gasps filled the air. Emily felt her heart race as panic began to bubble below the surface. How much longer could they hold their ground? "Keep calm," she shouted into the blackness, feeling her way forward. "We've handled worse. This is just the beginning." A flicker of light appeared, illuminating the corner of the room as one of the officers fumbled with a flashlight. Its beam cut through the dark, revealing anxious faces, and Emily realized they all needed a plan. "We have to stay together," she urged, her voice carrying confidence into the uncertainty. "No one stands alone in this fight." But outside, the sounds of approaching footsteps and murmurs of authority crept into the room, slicing through the tension. Reality pressed down like a weight, reminding her that they were still in the grip of danger. Fear and defiance tangled together as she took a deep breath, searching for the strength to push forward. At that moment, she knew their lives were on a precipice. Would this gathering be the spark for change, or would they find themselves crushed under the weight of a power they dared to challenge? As the footsteps drew closer, Emily felt her heart pound against her chest. She could see the flickers of defiance in her neighbors, but anxiety wove through them like shadows in the night. What do we do now? Greg whispered, urgency brimming in his voice. And just like that, the hardest question yet loomed over them, as the darkness seemed to swallow not just the light, but their chance for a way forward. What would they choose, to follow the instinct to flee or the courage to confront? The footsteps outside grew louder, threatening to break the fragile resolve that bound the group together. Emily's heart raced as she felt the weight of the moment pressing down like a lead blanket. We have to decide now, she urged, her voice rising above the mounting uncertainty. And the flickering light from the officer's flashlight. She could see Greg's face strained with worry, but also with determination. He nodded, pressing his lips together as if trying to contain all the emotions swirling inside. We can't go back now, he muttered. We need to hold the line. Hold the line, Emily echoed, the phrase resonating deep within her. It was more than a rallying cry. It was a declaration. They weren't just a group of frightened individuals anymore. They were a community, a family forged in shared struggles. The footsteps continued their relentless advance, and with them came the looming threat of authority. Let us move toward the back exit, she said, her mind racing. If we spread out, we can confuse them. We'll find a way to regroup outside. Without waiting for any protest, she gestured to the others, her heart hammering in her chest. They shuffled quietly, eyes wide with a mix of panic and resolve. Emily could feel the tension in the air as everyone moved together, a palpable energy that formed an invisible shield around them. As they made their way, a sudden crash sounded from the main door. Someone had kicked it in. A rush of officers flooded in, the beam of their flashlights cutting through the darkness like knives. Panic erupted among the group, the sound of shuffling feet and whispered fears colliding in chaotic harmony. Emily grabbed Greg's arm. We need to hurry. Everyone follow us. She pushed forward, adrenaline fueling her movements as they wove through the dimly lit room. She glanced back to see Carla, her face set in fierce determination, ushering others along. It filled Emily with a surge of hope even in the face of fear. Watch out, shouted one of the officers, pointing toward them. Emily's heart dropped. They were cornered in a split second. She spotted a window near the back wall still intact, but the risk of breaking it could attract even more attention. This way, she cried, lunging for it. Climbing onto a nearby chair, she reached for the window. It was a struggle, but she pushed through, the sharpness of glass scraping her arms. Greg, help me, she yelled as she heaved herself up and clumsily tumbled over the sill. As she rolled onto the ground outside, the cool air hit her like a wave, refreshing yet frightening. She scrambled to her feet, glancing around. Come on, it's clear, she shouted, waving the others over. One by one, her friends spilled out of the building and onto the street, breaths heavy and chests heaving. They had escaped the grip of fear, but could they really say they were free? The unanswered question hung in the air, even as whispers of encouragement started to rise among them, each voice a thread weaving back together the fabric of their resolve. We must find a place to regroup and strategize, said Greg, looking deep into Emily's eyes. Yes, she breathed. The fire of their fight wasn't extinguished yet. It was just beginning, but even as they forged ahead, a sense of profound uncertainty rooted itself in her mind. Would they be safe? What would they face next? In the distance, she caught a faint glint of headlights approaching. A chill ran down her spine. They're coming after us, she murmured. As the glow of the headlights grew larger, an electric thrill simmered in the air. Would they find their strength in numbers, or would the impending chaos swallow them whole? Emily took a deep breath, her heart beating in rhythm with their collective determination. Let's south head toward the park. We'll find safety there, she said, and the group started moving again. Their shadows stretched long in the growing horizon, but as they hurried deeper into the fading light, she couldn't shake the feeling that trials awaited them, trials that would demand far more than they had ever given. What lay ahead could threaten everything they had fought for. And in that moment, she feared the coming storm might not just be a test, but a reckoning. What truths would surface when they ventured into the night? The encounter of a lifetime was lurking just around the corner, and Emily couldn't help but wonder, could they truly withstand what was coming next? The air was thick with tension as they raced towards the park, the realization of their vulnerability sinking in. Emily strained her ears, listening for any hint of pursuit. Her gut twisted with worry. The headlights were getting closer than she'd like to admit. "Keep moving. We can't stop," she urged as a concerned glance swept over her friends. They stumbled over uneven pavement, fear propelling them forward. Greg stayed close, his presence a steadying force. She could see the strain on his face, worry etched into every contour. "Where do we go once we reach the park?" he questioned, his breath coming out in sharp bursts. "We can't just stand there waiting for them." Emily wasn't sure. The park had always been a sanctuary, a place where laughter echoed through the trees and joy fluttered in the air. But now, it felt like a potential trap, another place where they could lose it all. She had seen those flickering headlights reflected in the sky only minutes ago. Their safety was anything but guaranteed. "I don't know, but we have to regroup. We need to think. We might not have all the answers yet, but we can't let them catch up to us," she replied, gripping his hand tighter. They reached the edge of the park, where the trees loomed like sentinels guarding secrets. It was eerily quiet, yet the rustling leaves whispered promises of cover. Emily led them toward an old gazebo that had seen better days. Standing there, it felt like an anchor in a storm, a place to gather their scattered thoughts. Once they were inside, Emily took a moment to catch her breath. The stillness around them was interrupted only by the heavy panting of her friends. She searched their faces, recognizing the same fear mirrored in each pair of eyes. They had all fought their own battles before, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival, it was about standing up for what was right. "Anyone have a phone? We should check for updates," Carla suggested, her voice trembling slightly. Emily shook her head, guilt tugging at her heart. "Mine is dead," she confessed. "I think mine is still working," Greg said, pulling it from his pocket. He quickly scrolled through, but Emily could see the frustration mounting. "No service. Of course. Just our luck." A silence fell over the group, heavy and suffocating. Emily turned away for a moment, trying to regulate her breathing and feed the fire of hope flickering inside her. They'd gotten this far. They weren't about to give in now. "There must be a way to contact someone, anyone," Greg continued, but desperation laced his voice. "Maybe we can find someone to help us in the park," Emily suggested, glancing toward the sprawling shadows beyond the gazebo. "I'll go check it out." "Wait. You can't go alone," Carla protested, panic seeping through her words. "I'll go. I'll be quick," Emily reassured them, forcing a brave smile, even though her insides churned with uncertainty. "Just be careful," Greg said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need you back here." As Emily stepped cautiously into the darkness, she felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. What was waiting in the park? Was it danger or potential allies? She could feel the weight of the world on her shoulders, and the thought of letting down her friends drove her forward. Every rustle, every shadow seemed to stretch into ominous shapes. She squeezed her fists, willing herself to stay calm. What if this was where her greatest trial awaited? Just then, the distant sound of voices echoed through the trees. Her heart raced. Were they friends or foes? She took a deep breath, pushing ahead with determination, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. But as she emerged from the cover of the trees, a figure stepped into view, illuminated by the glow of a nearby streetlight. Relief rushed through her veins, but it quickly morphed into dread as the familiar face came into focus, a face she had not seen in years. Could this be the twist her journey needed, or would this reunion only deepen their struggles? She took a step back, a war of emotions raging within her. "Emily?" the figure called. Softly, and for a moment, everything paused. What had she just walked into? Emily's breath caught in her throat. The person standing before her, bathed in the soft glow of the streetlight, was none other than her childhood friend, Matthew. It had been years since they last saw each other, a lifetime. In fact, of silence peppered only by memories of carefree days running through the neighborhood, dreams shared under starlit skies. Matthew, she breathed, her heart pounding. Memories flooded back, warm and bittersweet. But this wasn't a reunion steeped in nostalgia. This was a moment laced with urgency, with fear looming behind every shadow. "Is it really you?" His voice was cautious, searching for confirmation. I heard you were back in town, organizing something big." His eyes were wide, revealing hints of worry. "Yeah, it's a fight for our community," she said, glancing behind her, acutely aware of the potential dangers closing in on her friends. "But right now, I need help. We're being chased. The folks in charge don't want us stirring things up." Matthew's brow furrowed with concern. "I know the area well. We could find a safe place to regroup, but time is of the essence." His urgency ignited a flicker of hope in her heart. "Can you lead us somewhere?" His expression shifted, a determination rising to the surface. "Absolutely. Follow me." As they moved through the park, Emily filled Matthew in on everything that had happened, how she had discovered the pendant, uncovered her family legacy, and ignited a community movement against injustice. Her passion was palpable, and with every word, she could see the spark of recognition ignite in Matthew's eyes. He had once walked alongside her, sharing those same dreams of brighter days. Finally, they reached a dilapidated shed, hidden behind a thick wall of vines and tangled branches. "In here," he urged, ushering her and the others in. The interior smelled of damp earth and forgotten memories, a private sanctuary from the chaos outside. Once inside, Matthew turned serious. "We have to stay low for now and come up with a plan. I have a few contacts nearby who can help us get our message out. We can't let fear dictate our actions. We're stronger than they think." Emily felt the energy shift as her friends nodded in agreement. Her heart swelled. They had come through a storm, yet here they were, standing united, ready to take back their power. "Okay, everyone," she said, firm and focused. "Matthew's right. We are about to unleash our community's voice. It's time we pulled together everything we've collected, the stories, the facts, every personal struggle, and we'll compile them in a way that can't be ignored." Greg, visibly calmer now, chimed in. "And we need to be strategic about it. We can hold a demonstration. Make our stories heard on a larger scale. It'll show the world we aren't going back into the shadows." "Yes." Emily grinned, adrenaline pumping through her veins. "We'll plan this carefully. We can't allow them to silence us any longer." Hours passed as they strategized in that dusty shed, sharing ideas, plotting their paths forward, breathing life into the transformation they longed for. As each voice joined the chorus, the collective resolve grew stronger. The darkness outside felt less suffocating. It became a backdrop to a brighter horizon that lay ahead. Eventually, they stepped out of the shelter, renewed and ready to face whatever challenges loomed in the distance. The headlights that had haunted Emily's thoughts now served as a beacon, illuminating their way forward. They had emerged from fear and uncertainty strengthened, ignited by a purpose. As they made their way to the heart of the community, Emily's heart swelled with pride. She glanced over at Greg, Carla, and Matthew, each one brimming with defiance and hope. They weren't just fighting for themselves anymore. They were standing for every person in their community who had suffered in silence. The moment was here. Awareness was rising like the sun, promising a new dawn. "Remember," Emily said as they hit the streets, "our stories matter. And together, we are unstoppable." Cheers erupted from their small band as they marched on, ready to reclaim their space with vibrant voices and the united power of their struggle. The future was unknown, but one thing was clear. They were not facing it alone, and as they moved forward, Emily clutched her pendant tightly, feeling its energy pulsate with each step, a symbol of hope, a reminder of dreams, and a testament to a fight worth fighting. Now is the time to join the movement. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every click counts. I want to hear your reactions, So comment below and share your feelings about this ending. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation together. We can create a wave of change.